Diversity is not our strength. Your multicultural scam is not working. We have had enough. We are done with it. They all must go. Tensions are extremely high across all the major cities in Europe. It really does feel like something is about to happen. It really does feel like we're reaching boiling point. You'd expect the mainstream to maybe try simmer down emotions. Instead, they've gone after the people and said that the British people are going to be a minority very, very soon, and that the Irish people are just mongrels, not indigenous to this island at all, that in fact, we quite possibly could be African.
Don't crash out over this, but if you really think about it, we have been around a lot longer than people that look like you have been around.
There probably isn't such thing as an Irish person, but biologically speaking, because a lot of you guys will have a lot of different things mixed into your blood.
Fuck off.
Before we get into it, I want to say thank you to all the new subscribers in the last couple of days. I really do appreciate it. And if you're new here and you haven't already subscribed, maybe you would consider doing that. Maybe like the video, share the video. I'd really appreciate that. Cheers. We, the Irish, were never homogenous. Always hybrids, always mongrels. New RTE TV series tells the story of an island over 1,000 years in a way that both informs and challenges people. With anti-immigration protests happening almost every single day now in Ireland, this was not what you would expect the mainstream to come out with in terms of calming down the indigenous people. And this really does go back to the old days of COVID, when it felt like we were being antagonized. You can't go into a bar unless you've taken the injection. This type of ludicrous, delusional gaslighting, it feels like the very same here in terms of antagonization. Whilst the mainstream media and our politicians seem to be just blatantly ignoring the Irish people and choosing to talk about Middle Eastern wars, Pride Month, climate change, and everything except for what is on the front of everybody's lips in this country, and that is the replacement of the people. Immigration is out of control, not just in Ireland, across the world. The people are being ignored and they're being called far right and every other pejorative that you can imagine. And the media are just making it worse by coming out in the middle of a week of protests and unrest here in Ireland, where people are just so fed up with everything, they come out and call us mongrels. You can talk about who wrote this and how they're not from Ireland. You can talk about Colin Farrell, who's going to be narrating this new show, and the fact that how could you call yourself an Irishman if all of a sudden we're mongrels and we're not even indigenous to this country. But I think we should be concentrating on the audacity of the mainstream media and the government as a whole, because in these times of extreme heightened tension, they want to antagonize the people. It's almost like they want that powder keg moment. They want something to push us over the line. Last weekend during the Liverpool parade, we saw these horrific images of a car ploughing through people, and we all thought the exact same thing. And a buddy of mine reached out to me before we were very bizarrely told that it was a 53-year-old white male. Before that information was put out there, my buddy said, if this is one of the usual suspects, this could be the powder keg moment for the UK again. This could spark something really, really big, like we saw last year. And we've seen the government crack down and, take political prisoners and hold people like Lucy Connolly hostage in the aftermath of that. And you can only think that headlines coming out like this, calling the people mongrels in the face of daily protests, is done 100% to antagonize. White British people will be the minority in 40 years, reports claim. Shifting ethnic dynamic of the UK, driven by immigration, predicted to cause dramatic changes. This is coming from a mainstream outlet. This is the Telegraph. They're telling the British people that you're going to be replaced. Every working class British person is being told that this will no longer be your home. You're not going to have a home anymore. And it's by design and it's by plan. And what exactly is the purpose of a headline like this? Is it informative? We were informed 15 years ago by the likes of Stephen Molyneux. He said that Ireland would be overrun by 2030, just like Greece, just like France. But we didn't pay attention. They were too busy sipping lattes, growing mustaches and mullets. A petition to stop financial and other support for asylum seekers surges to 100k signatures. This is the UK. This is how you push back. During the pandemic times, we saw almost 1 million people on the streets of London pushing back against a totalitarian government. They weren't having it, and rightly so. And these are the type of numbers that we need to see now in terms of anti-immigration. Because across Europe, we've seen an influx of tribalism, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Thousands of people took to the streets of Madrid in an anti-immigration protest demanding that their government send migrants back to their own country. The remigration push comes after Madrid experienced an influx of migrants, sparking major backlash.
So when you hear these outlandish numbers about how the demographics of our countries are changing, you can't help but to be shocked.
Listen to this. Between 2015 and 2021, which is 6 years, the foreign population in Spain grew by 1.5 million. 2022 saw a record-breaking 1.2 million migrants in that year alone. 2023 saw the second highest amount of migrants poured into the country in a decade at 642,296. In 2024, partial data shows a 189% increase in migration from 2023. In fact, we've seen massive protests in countries like Belgium, Italy, Germany, Sweden, Austria, the Netherlands, France, Ireland, and Portugal.
But to hear mainstream news outlets in America covering this story and talking about remigration, because it's a forbidden sentence here in Ireland and in the UK apparently, but there's some seriously good work being done on the ground, behind the scenes, and of course it doesn't get covered. You only see it on social media. That's why it's got to be shared and pushed out there as much as you can. And whilst the images that we've seen coming out of France in the last couple of days have been horrendous and disgusting, it's such a white pill to see the patriotic people of all these countries standing up and pushing back and calling for remigration. This stage, it is the only option. Diversity is not our strength. Your multicultural scam is not working. We have had enough. We are done with it. They all must go. It's as simple as that. We need to protect our own, no other option. And with the images coming out of France, which were absolutely appalling but predictable because they're further down the rabbit hole than any of the other Western countries in terms of the influx of African people in there, a complete demographic replacement has happened. There really is no such thing as French people anymore. The images we saw coming out after the Champions League, and again we saw the pernicious mainstream media put a slant on this as if it was boisterous teenagers that were upset because their football team lost. And I work in construction. I meet guys every day and they were all saying the same to me. The football hooligans were at it again. So you really don't know what's going on. You really don't know that this was an ongoing civil war between whites and blacks. They have become emboldened because of the mainstream, because of the despotic government. They don't feel like they're French. They feel like they're African and they are taking over. And that's exactly what's happening in every other Western country as well. I really have no idea how this is going to unfold going forward. But what I do know is that the Irish people, the British people, European people have had enough. And unless the government actually start to listen and start to put in place a plan to remigrate all these new to the neighbourhood, then something very similar to what you saw in France will happen, except for it won't get a pass by the media. If any of that made sense, let me know down below and maybe hit like, subscribe and share. Cheers.